We'll call the meeting to order at 6:02. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, next on the agenda we have correspondence, visitors, and public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to make a comment tonight? We have one. Please, if you don't mind standing up and just state your name so we can record that, please.
Good evening. My name is Pam Green. I'm from Franklin. And my partner David Benyon. We're both here tonight to support the Franklin project. Our school is really overcrowded. It's filled to the brim with cute little Franklin kids. And our real estate market is very hot right now in Franklin, maybe all over the county, I guess. But I keep hearing every day about a different house with young children moving in that's bought and about double the price of what the appraised value is to boot. So I just feel it's really important to let you know that so many of our townspeople really support the effort that we're looking at, that you're looking at deciding tonight. And we really feel it's an important issue of really fairness and equity. We're just looking for the same kind of space that our other sister schools have in our district. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Pam. Any other public comments for this evening?
Looking at the agenda, and I don't know if there's any purpose on the order, but I would think the facility project update may take longer than some of them. Would it be wise to first try to get everything off the board before we get tonight? Just a consideration.
Well, we're on to agenda review now, so Don moved on before we did. All right. So you're proposing we slide that one to the.
Consider it. I think it would be good discussion. I don't think it would be probably terribly lengthy, but it might take more time than some of the others.
So I'm gonna keep the Highgate safety plan kind of last because I'm expecting executive session on that. Why don't we swap B and C? So we'll do the continuous improvement plan. We'll swap B and C with A there. So we'll do the continuous improvement plan, the board development goals, and then we'll do the facilities project updates.
Thank you.
I just want to point out Coach is running late, so maybe that could affect the order.
We'll be flexible there if we have to be. All right, without objection. Okay, next we have consent agenda, so approval of the minutes from our August 2nd meeting. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion?
I will make the motion to approve the August 2nd, 2022 meeting minutes.
All right, so it was the first to approve the minutes from August 2nd. Is there a second? Joanne is the second. All right, any discussion on the second minutes? Seeing none. All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes from August 2nd, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 7-0. All right, business items. We have EEI board walkthrough of the Highgate Hvac project. So we have John Brown here from EEI, who's gonna, are you gonna share anything here, or are we just?
We're taking a walk.
We're taking a walk. We're gonna tour the project. All right.
Four heat recovery units that are providing ventilation and cooling and heating to all the classrooms in this way. And then on the other side of the school, there's one that controls the gym, and then another unit that controls the classrooms on either side of the gym. Those are the 5th and 6th grade classrooms, am I correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So we are nearing the end. We should be pretty much substantially complete on Friday, maybe into Monday a little bit. All the units were turned on Monday. we're ironing out some kinks there, but things are running now, mostly on this end of the school. You can see that we've also replaced all the ceiling, new light fixtures. We've painted the walls. Yeshua's through Stephanie's team here, cleaning floors here. That's pretty good. Come down here, you can see units that are running, and take a step into one of the classrooms.
Up here too, you can see all the new units. Looks great.
So I realize this might sound a little bit out here. The units are, like we said, we just turned these on, right? We have not dialed these in. They're kind of what we call running wild right now. This is running at 100% fan speed. Once we're done, it should throttle down to around 60% fan speed. And then when all the ceiling tiles are in, these ceiling tiles have an acoustical liner in them, it'll be much, much quieter than what you're hearing now. We want to leave some ceiling tiles out here so you can kind of see what we did. And also, we're working on these units, well, not right now, but tomorrow morning.
John, you mentioned cooling, but it's moving the air around, right? It's not air conditioning.
It's not air conditioning, right? So it's dehumidification, which a byproduct of that is some cooling. We're going to be looking for 72, 75 degree temperature with 40 to 50% humidity, right? Which is the same, feels like temperature as 72, 71, and 60% humidity, right? So we're able to have that temperature go up a little bit while keeping that humidity down. Still feels comfortable in the rooms. If you step into that classroom right there, that room is pretty much satisfied in the temperature and humidity that it normally would be. You can kind of feel what they feel.
So you mean these aren't just heating, these are also cooling?
It's heating, cooling, and a lot of ventilation.
So they're gonna have like AC?
It's not quite AC.
Is it like a heat pump that you have
It
in
is.
your house?
It is a very, very big.
Because I have that in my house and it's AC and heat.
Well, step on outside. We'll show you. We'll show you what the outside looks like.
Okay, I'll see if it's the same.
It's a much bigger version.
Wow, but they're gonna have AC then? Oh my God.
They're very
I
fresh.
should record everybody when they come in.
So we're doing this for all the schools with their HV stuff?
You tell me.
Okay, so we haven't already.
We haven't already.
But I just know we've talked about HV in all the schools, so I just
Yeah.
wondered if all of them have it then.
So the big push for this and the big benefit of this is we're now putting in, once we all balance and tweak the system out here, we'll be putting in the code required fresh air into each classroom. So previously we were putting in, the old system was about 100 to 125 cubic feet a minute of fresh air into the hallway, right? It wasn't going in each classroom, it was kind of being dumped into the hallway and it went where it went. When we're done tweaking everything out, each room will get about 300 CFM, each room, not just the hallway, each room will get 300 CFM of fresh air. So the Ashrae Requirements, which is kind of what drives all of this, is 10 cubic feet of fresh air per minute per occupant. We'll be able to do that kind of 20, 25-ish people in each classroom.
Okay, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but
Sure.
all the numbers. So what you're saying
It's
is.
way better than it was before.
Okay, but what you're saying is like the house, that I have heating, I have air conditioning and heat, but I don't wanna have full-on heat or full-on AC.
You also have ventilation, right? So
Yeah.
instead of just temperature control, we're
Right,
actually bringing
because
in
it
fresh
brings in
air.
the air to cool it.
The number one COVID mitigation measure and mitigation measure for any infectious disease is dilution, right? So by bringing in more fresh air and getting rid of more stale air, the risk for infectious disease transmission in these rooms is a lot lower.
So I guess I just have a clarifying question. So I know that we've talked about all this stuff and all the schools have gotten this stuff, right? The HVAC or whatever. Is this the same thing as that we're talking about, or is this something different?
So this system is unique to this school.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
this school has AC and we have to work on the others.
So the other schools, there is a system at MVU that's far, far different than this.
But they have AC.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is,
they are actually.
they actually
Well,
are.
MVU has AC. Swanton has it in certain areas, like the library and the office, but not in their classrooms.
Yeah.
I just remember
Yeah.
that I've heard
It's
teachers
odd.
saying it's getting so hot in September and in June and it's like miserable. So I hope that's part of the plan.
Yeah, the HVAC projects in the other schools are more for automation and control, not air cooling or moisture,
Yeah.
whatever.
Now I understand what you're asking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are taking in Swanton and Franklin existing building and, well, really Swanton and Franklin this summer, are taking digital control of the heating system to make it run more efficiently.
So just the heat.
Just the heating system. So
John, when you mentioned the fresh air, come up with a number that sounds good, and it certainly feels good here, but put 22 kids in here, 2 adults.
Yep.
Changes the mix a little bit.
So it will deliver that same amount of fresh air regardless of who's in the room.
That's enough to keep it comfortable.
Yeah, it's the code required.
But you're
fresh
right,
air.
it does feel warmer with all of us in here than when we
Yeah.
first walked in.
Well, and don't forget, as John said, this is just I can't remember the words you use, how it's on right now.
It is running wild.
Running wild.
Right.
So
I love
there's no automation set in this specific room that says this many people for this long will the air will change over or whatnot.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. John's company will do that once kids are here and then into late fall, early winter to actually say what spaces need what changes to keep it feeling
Right.
comfortable.
Oh, I like this.
We'll get them to the baseline.
Right.
We go to what the engineer says the baseline is, right? And engineers are great, but they don't know everything, right? I know everything. Right? So we'll get, and Devin knows this from the hospital, right? We'll get to the engineer established baseline end of this week, beginning of next week, and then we start tweaking. And the tweaking happens as kids come in here, and then as the temperature changes outside, we'll say, okay, we need to move some heat from here to the end of the hallway, or vice versa. So, but it is just a really complicated heat pump system. So if you look outside, there is just like you have at your house.
Yep.
Put your hand in front of here, feel the hot air. Right, so that is taking the heat energy in the building and putting it outside, pumping it outside. It's very, well, it's new enough that it's not everywhere, but it's established. It's 10 or 15 years, but it's getting into more reach.
It's really good.
This is out of your
Glad we
way.
did it in our house.
No, it's
Yes.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
I never really understood it until you just showed us. We put this in our house a couple of years ago, and oh my God, it's quite something.
Yeah, you can feel the heat.
It's hot air.
And it's fuel economy and all that.
And there will be fencing. If you're wondering.
Oh, we're not gonna use it for the kids to warm up?
Nope. yeah.
Well,
Oh, gotcha.
keep shorter fingers.
Yeah, good point.
And one is actually they're actually back like 5 or 6 inches, but I told John I'm still very worried. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. They're gonna put like a fence-like thing so that kids can't get in there.
Heavy barbed wires.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Barbed wire doesn't always look good at schools, but I like your thinking.
Can you imagine? Talk about getting canceled.
Put electric on it too.
It's gonna be something where the air can get out of. So
Yeah,
you
it'll
don't
be
have
like
to
a
go.
fence, right? Something like a fence.
Yep.
Wall right there, what we're gonna do.
That's a classic. Of course, that's right. You walked through earlier today, and you can hear it just barely inside.
It's so used to it.
Yeah, it's kind of white noise, and the kids in there.
Excuse me.
So that's kind of the long and short of this end. I do have not a real easy way to show some of the kind of before and after pictures and the progress of construction here. I don't know if we want to try to put those up on a screen somewhere, or if we want to.
We can in there.
We can in there, yep.
You want to go walk to the other side?
Yeah, definitely.
Did you talk about that?
I saw it right through it. It looked good.
It's like a war zone.
Yeah. We got a lot of work to do. We're really pleased with that.
Go ahead, ladies.
I'm just trying to get
You
behind
can
the
say
camera.
age before beauty, let's make it work. Or is it beauty before age? Maybe it's beauty before age, I don't know.
Isn't it super cool, Don, when you feel the hot air coming out of the fan?
No, the thing I like, you mentioned, people, I remember the first time I heard this, you lower the humidity, in fact, the temperature. So it could be 72 if you lower the humidity to 70.
Exactly.
If you increase the humidity to 70.
Exactly.
And we did a big job at the all the stats. And they can do it whenever they want. 174, 168.
But they had that satisfaction of pushing the button down.
Nobody will know you weren't here.
Somebody finally figured it out.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. The thermostat's here, they have like. We didn't tour it. So they can only go.
And that's probably what we had, but we told them. We didn't tell them anything. They just kept playing it.
Very, very comfortable. Yeshua was really excited. It wasn't as cold as his office, but it's cold.
There was pipes in here before, is this all new that we see now?
So there was, in the corners, you kind of see where those plates are there?
Yep.
There were two ancient 1960 era units that were hanging there.
Yep.
That did heating and the tiniest little bit of ventilation. And they were on their very, very last legs. And so those were pulled out actually over April break. We came in here and did a blitz during April break and installed this ductwork here. You're hearing a little bit of noise, that kind of tinkling noise. Because we haven't finished the balancing yet, these diffusers are kind of running wild and are a little bit loose. As we work through that this week, that noise will go away. And if it doesn't, we're going to replace the diffusers to make them go away.
If you've ever been in a school lunchroom, that won't.
Well, when you're having like an award ceremony or something like that, and here graduation, if you decide to have it here, you'll notice it then.
But you had it running wild.
We had it
today,
running
full
wild.
blast, and we were in here, and I couldn't, it was remarkable how quiet it was.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the ductwork you see here is actually from another unit that's outside that kind of comes up into the attic, over here, back down, and actually provides the ventilation, heating, and cooling for the classroom on either side. There's just the way the building is chopped up, there was no easy way to get that ductwork there. This is the best solution we came up with. We've been in talks about what this looks like and how to protect the ductwork from damage. And so we're still trying to sort that out. That's not something that will be done before school wraps up, obviously, or school starts, obviously. But we're looking on how to address that maybe over Christmas break. So Yeshua and I did throw some basketballs at it as hard as we could, and it didn't do any damage.
You did that today before the walk.
We did that. We did that a couple hours ago.
We were gonna cover it.
It was Yeshua's idea. So you can see these hallways on here that are working on the other side.
Higher in there now or no?
Much.
It is much higher.
So the ceiling height, so right about where you're standing, was about 4 inches over your head.
No, I meant in the gym.
No, the gym's the same.
Same, right, but here's higher.
Yeah, so right here, it's right about here, you can actually see. The ceiling height was down around here. Because there was an old unit that was here.
Oh, I see.
And so we pulled that unit out because it's now not needed. And we're able to raise the ceiling height up quite a bit. We tried to get to 8 foot ceiling, which is kind of the standard. We got to 7'6". That's as high as we can go. We'd still have room for all the ductwork and whatnot that has to be. So, and then new light fixtures and new paint through here. So, you kind of see.
So Peter, when you were in school, would you have seen this and jumped up, see if you could pop it? Ceiling down? I saw that hand.
Fortunately, they're short, right? It was a high school we got to already. So the system off here. The fresh air, heated and conditioned air comes in through there, and the stale air is taken back out through that ductwork, back out to the gym. Right, that's the ideal kind of design. Fresh air on one side, stale air out on the other side, so that you're washing that fresh air across the room.
It's a nice classroom.
Yeah, I wish this was on right now, but we're working out the kinks on this.
It's really nice.
Is everything gonna be up and running for start of school?
Yes, yeah, should be by Friday. There's one part we're waiting on that might have to come in end of next week, but by the time school starts up, I'm promised that it'll be running from our contractors.
Who does the landscaping? I mean, it's beautiful. He's gone.
Laura.
If you're, you know, with a team at school.
How these other ones would be. It's worth a couple minutes to check over there. It's pretty impressive. What room was it?
It's this.
Go down to the hall and take a
Turn
right.
right,
and there's the
first one on the
door
right.
on your right. It's worth
I can walk in there when we walk back there.
It's pretty cool. Just that hallway. Yeah. And then the outside units on the outside.
Couple more things to show you back here. So some people might know that we found a different way to run the ductwork in the building, which resulted in about $60,000 to $70,000 in savings. We reinvested that into this hallway, and amongst other things. So this hallway, I don't know who may have remembered this. This was old brown exposed trusses. You could see the bottom of the old roof. It was a pretty industrial, but not hipster industrial look to it. We went through, replaced the flooring, new ceiling, new light fixtures, and painted the back hallway just to make it nicer. That was again from savings that we found when we rerouted the ductwork. The original route had it going through 6 masonry walls in the attic, which was concrete cutting and a lot more labor to run that through there. So we reinvested that savings back into the project.
Yeah, it's not nice light.
Yeah, it's the brightest hallway in the whole school.
Yeah.
Another thing we did with the savings that we found from this is the fire panel that ran the building was ancient, probably mid-80s. I'm just guessing, maybe a little bit older than that.
That's not ancient.
It was
Just in the electrical wall.
ancient-ish. So we went through and replaced that with Jason's standard panel that's at MVU. We're starting a standardization process across the district. What we did not do was replace all the devices. So these are a hodgepodge of things that have been upgraded over time. And so Laura and Yeshua and I have been kind of talking about a plan to replace those over time. So we have our final inspection with the fire marshal and the electrical inspector on Thursday. They've all been through this a bunch of times and are ecstatic that we've brought it up so far. And I'm not expecting any pushback from leaving these devices for now.
What does a replacement unit like that cost?
To do the entire school, you're probably looking in the $80,000 to $100,000 range to do all the devices in the school. And it's, I'm just ballparking. It's, based just on experience. But those devices now, the old devices were Simplex, which is a proprietary device. You go with Simplex, you're stuck with Simplex forever. The new panel is a Honeywell Silent Night panel, which anybody can work on. And that was by design.
Simplex had a monopoly for a long time.
They still do. Larger commercial buildings.
And more than just those, all those communication systems are also Simplex.
Yeah, I'm very happy there's competitors out there that are equivalent, because for a long time there wasn't.
No. And they repaired when it worked to better advantage.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen intercoms down in schools.
Yeah.
Next month.
Yeah. So we'll go down to the cafeteria real quick. That's really the final stuff. Watch your step in here.
We'll find out.
Yes, so the original ceiling kind of matched what was over here.
Right.
We had to make room for the ductwork to get to the gym.
Oh, okay.
So, I motion for discussion.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
So. In the teacher's lounge over here, the gray room, this is the big ductwork that comes in from the outside, goes up into the ceiling, comes across here, turns, and goes into what was actually the old roof, and then zigzags to get over into the gym. That's the big ductwork. There's a wall in front of that. That. So this is the ductwork that's above. Right. So it comes up through that wall, just above the ceiling, and it turns and goes down. And then we have a new access to get up into the attic. Fortunately, there should be no reason to go up there anymore. The original access was a 18 by 18 square in the corner of the closet. It was not fun. We can go look at the outside units if anybody wants to go see the big units that are sitting outside, or we can leave those alone. Other stuff that's happening in here that is wrapping up tomorrow is the new walk-in cooler and walk-in freezer equipment. The electrician's coming tomorrow to power that up, and then we're off and running with that, and over to Spawn.
So it's a lot better already in the walk-in cooler.
Yeah. It's looking good.
So on the replacing those units, that'd have to be a non-school type of thing. You'd have to have students in the school while you're replacing those.
To replace the units that are in there, that's, yeah, that's definitely.
But you might do it during a school vacation.
You're talking about the.
On your file, your boxes, changing.
Yeah, it's longer than what you would do in a week. It's probably 3 weeks.
Could you mix them and do, say, half of them, so people?
You could,
I don't mean original, but let's say you came in Christmas and you had a week.
yeah.
Like this, and then you came back in February and finish it, or you have to have it all online at the same time, because.
If you do them piecemeal, you have to add a module so that the old system talks to the new system. You're probably talking a 20% add in cost versus
So
doing
they're
it.
basically better to do it as a summer job.
Do it in
Close it down.
Yeah.
Because if they're functioning, there's no reason to have to rush to replace
No,
them.
it's, I'm not anticipating the fire marshal or anybody saying, this is an emergency and do this now. It's gonna be something.
Usually we're out of school by the middle of June, so if we had the money in this year, we could do it by June.
Yeah.
Or enough, you could have it up by June 30.
Yeah, June 30 or, 4th of July week.
Yeah, responsive. Well, I don't know. We never know if we're gonna have money or not.
Right.
Some years we're flush and some years.
Some years you're not.
The other F word.
I'm like that too.
All right, this is good.
So there was no HVAC work done in this room. This was left out of the scope for cost reasons. There was conversation about adding the same kind of HVAC system in here. It just wasn't in the budget. So it's just general renovations. Yeah. In here, really, it's just some new light fixtures and this soffit to make room for ductwork that runs to the other side of the school.
Jason, you're signing up for lunch.
We're gonna fight over that.
Oh, nice and bright in here, isn't it, Don?
It is.
The kids read that.
I think this is great how they covered that up with that. I think that's really nice.
John, thanks for the tour of the HVAC project that's been going on. You had some pictures. I'd say let's, if you want to email those to share them that way with the board, I think in the interest of time. Take that approach. But thanks again. Appreciate it. It's a great improvement for sure. Next item on the agenda is financial and HR management software cloud hosting and management. Laura is going to talk through this one.
So if you remember, in my update last month, I talked about the issues we had again with a server that had gone down and caused us some downtime when we were trying to process a very important payroll, and then I would be coming back with options. After investigating those options with the tech team and talking internally within our office, the recommendation we would like to make is that we move from being self-hosted, which means that that financial and management software currently lives on a server at MVU, which has been an issue in a couple of years ago, and then there's another server that houses our VPN, which is what went down this last time, and that we'd like to move to fully hosted, so that it would actually be hosted with the software company, which is Infinite Visions and Tyler Technologies company. That would allow us to actually share an entire bulleted list of all of the benefits that would provide to us. For me, the biggest is basically the assurance that we will not go down. There will be no downtime. I know Derek spoke with them directly, and their response was they haven't gone down. They have so much redundancy in place that basically it doesn't happen, and if they did, we would never lose any more than 24 hours of data. But in the history of their company, it hasn't happened, and that's pretty remarkable. They're so large that they can put redundancy in place that we simply can't. Also, data privacy and security. They have multiple levels of security. They do annual penetration testing and security testing, so that our data is extremely safe. And when I asked the question to Sylvia and Derek about that safety, it's more safe than what we have now. People's information obviously is already out there on the web. They access their payroll information through a portal, an electronic portal like most of us do now. But our financial system would be more secure technically than it is now with this service. There's a lot of other points. I won't read you them all, but they're bulleted here. And actually, I'm a little embarrassed to say at this point, we haven't investigated this since 2014. Because it was cost prohibitive when we switched to Infinite Visions, as far as them being a fully hosted service, and the cost has come down remarkably. So actually, if we switch to the fully hosted from having our own maintenance and support of $12,000, almost $13,000, and then the offsite service from Tech Group, which is another $12,000 annually, we will actually be saving $2,200 a year if we move to fully hosted with Infinite Visions. So I'd love, and everyone in my office was like, oh my gosh, please get that approved after the last fiasco. So I would love for you to approve us to become fully hosted with Tyler for our Infinite Visions financial management and HR software.
Thanks, Laura. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the Mvsd financial and HR management software cloud hosting management contract with Tyler be entered into.
Alright, Toby's the first. Is there a second?
Also,
We got lots of seconds. I saw Jen first.
okay, we'll get Jen. She's a techie.
Alright, any discussion on this?
Do we need a dollar value on the motion?
I don't believe we,
It probably will go up probably 0 to 3% every year, just so we're aware. So I'd probably rather just have a motion to move to that being how we manage our services.
I think typically items of this dollar amount don't rise to the board level. This is such a big kind of structural change for us. I'm assuming why it came here.
Yes. And actually, our current contract expires, it was not following our fiscal year, and we hadn't changed that because we were supposed to be switching to e-finance, the new statewide system that's now on hold and probably not going to happen in December, and so we will literally just transition in January. It matches up perfectly to this new contract. And it would be prorated for just 6 months, and then we'll enter into a new 1-year contract to follow our fiscal year.
So the contract will start today or soon?
We can't implement probably until the first part of December, and then there'll be some testing, so it will
so
just
this
take us
won't
that
start.
long to get it up, work with Tyler to get it in place.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is not gonna have a negative impact on our budget.
No, actually, it's gonna save us almost $2,300.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of approving financial and HR management software cloud hosting and management contract with Cafeteria Technologies, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? abstentions? Motion carries 8-0.
Is Steve on Zoom?
I don't see Steve, are you?
Steve is there.
Oh, Steve is there, alright. Was that a aye? Alright, thumbs up, motion carries 9-0. Sorry about that, Steve. Alright, next we have Human Resources Director update. Bonnie.
So I won't take much time. I did put together an update and put it in the drive. I did just want to update you on hiring because it was a record year for HR for hiring. We have hired a total of 52 new staff members, with 40 of them being teachers, which we have new teacher orientation tomorrow for them. Along with that, we termed 54 people, so it was kind of a just record year for HR, and I just want to take the time to thank Jerry and Michelle for all of their work with it. It has been a very busy summer with our new benefits, our new voluntary benefits that we rolled out, and setting up deductions, and all of the server issues have greatly affected our setup and everything as well. So definitely a ton of effort from my team. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank them and update you on hiring.
Thanks, Bonnie. Does anyone have any questions, comments for Bonnie? Go ahead, Terry.
I would just like to thank you. And then also, I think we've talked about this before, but the reason we have so many new teachers isn't because teachers are leaving us in droves, but because
We had
retirements.
we had a lot of retirements this year, which we can attribute, probably if our Latin district changes and things. People are taking the opportunity now but we also have a number of those retired teachers wanting to come back and do tutoring for us and, part-time work for us and things. And we had a lot of our younger staff move out of state. A lot of people moved back home. They were, they started here out of college, and then following the pandemic and everything, we had a number of them moving back to where they came from. But luckily, we actually hired quite a few from our community, quite a few of our own MVU students coming back to teach here.
That's nice.
So it's great. Tomorrow will be exciting. We have a lot of excited energy coming in.
The reason I asked that or mentioned that is because, that's one of our goals is teacher retention. And I just want to make sure that I wanted to understand what might be skewing our results or outcomes, our measurements.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to keep in mind as we do this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just one quick question. So where are we percentage wise with how many teachers we need?
We only have 2 professional positions open right now, which is amazing for the state where we are, but nothing that prevents us from opening school, or at this point they are like twos but not have twos. We have 2 special educator openings in 2 different schools.
So all the other positions have been filled?
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah,
The
pretty
ag
amazing.
teachers are still here.
I'm sorry.
The agriculture teachers are still here.
Every one of them.
Peter?
So, I'm just curious on, a couple things. One, you talked about MVU students coming back to work for our district. Not names, but I don't know if in the future, if it's possible to get an idea how many that is. I think that'd be really interesting. And we did renegotiate a new contract this year, and it sounds like we're having more success than some maybe surrounding districts in hiring.
Yes.
That's very
Has that been a factor in the hiring?
Yes, it's been a big factor. Even when, sometimes when you explain the starting pay, but then you're able to tell them that there is a guaranteed increase over the next, each year for the next 2 years, they're very wow, that's amazing. And, we beefed up our benefits package. So going through those, I talk to every single new teacher. I make, do the salary and benefit call with them to, before they go to Julie and me. And, being able to have more benefits to offer and stuff has been huge. There's a lot of wow, really? That's great. I didn't know that, so it has been really great having the new agreement. People are very receptive to that, and our existing teachers have been very receptive to the new things we're offering and the guarantee of a known increase, a minimum of a known increase for the next couple of years.
It's good to hear, thank you.
What's the benefit that's getting the most, wow?
Well, I kind of run through, I call it HR in 90 seconds or less with them when I go through it all. So we go through the leave time, which is standard, but then we talk about the health insurance, and our health insurance package is really good. So that's always impressive. The fact that there's no cost to dental for teachers is a big one. And then we've added long-term disability, and we've added life insurance. So they're always pretty impressed with that, especially some of our new college graduates. Like, they don't necessarily realize that they might need that someday, so they're like, wow.
We're much more competitive. We are having fewer conversations where Bonnie is explaining our salary and benefits, and then we have to wait while they weigh other offers. There's a lot less of that. We're having much more success where people are choosing us first.
So that's professional staff. I don't know if you're ready, but like, we made some adjustments in the non-professional staff. I don't know if to say non-professional, but you know what I mean.
Union
The-
support, absolutely.
Yeah, so are we seeing the same, hopefulness with the changes we made to retain or attract?
Yes, our
Yes.
starting wage is much higher, but more importantly, we have only had like 6 open union positions this year.
Okay,
We had, our retention rate for union support is huge.
okay.
Usually we're hiring quite a number, and at the time of contracts, we had about 3 openings from people coming back. Over the summer, we had, a couple people decide to retire. We actually lost 2. And in Swanton, we lost 2 for childcare issues and things like that, but not because of pay, not because I'm going somewhere else for pay. So our retention rate, that impacted our retention rate of our union support immensely.
And we're heading into negotiations again.
Yes.
Can I just add quickly to Peter? I did an informal poll with Jerry today, and according to her, we have 7 MVU graduates out of 40 positions coming back as teachers. So that's really, really exciting.
There's one common numbers, Joanne, success after graduation.
Thank you, Bonnie. That was a excellent update.
Yeah, appreciate that.
All right, next we have new teacher hires, so stay on topic. Julie?
Yes, well, we have 3 teachers to get your approval on. First, Rourke Vlad, who is going to be teaching 1st grade in Swanton. He is an exceptional new teacher. I'm very excited about having him work with our younger students. I also met with Justina Mahler, who will be a special educator also in Swanton. And she's coming to us with some really good experience working with students with disabilities, and so that's exciting as well. And then we have Brooke Bissett. Brooke is going to be a regular ed academic specialist is what we're calling it. We're trying to get as many special educators as we can, but then also have some general ed licensed folks who can, if they're not ready to be a special educator, if that's not what their license is, we want to have people who can do very good quality small group instruction under the direction of a special educator. So that will be happening as well, and Brooke comes with experience doing that. So we're excited about that. So we would look for your approval of those 3 hires.
Thanks, Julie. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, go ahead, I made a motion, because I have a question.
I'll make the motion.
Renix made a motion to
Adopt the new hires.
approve the 3 new
I'll
hires.
second it.
All right, and Dawn is the second.
The question I have is for Julie. the first person you mentioned,
Yes,
first grade,
yes,
first-time teacher?
yes. That's the vacancy we have. He had very good, experience and energy and was really, I think he's gonna be an asset to those kids. They're gonna be very excited to have a young male first grade teacher.
Very good. He'll be tired about how It's all right, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's great. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, those in favor of approving the three new hires as read by Julie, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Steve, I didn't see your vote. Looks like Steve is frozen up there at the moment, so motion carries 8-0, pending amendment there, Steve. Okay.
Thank you for the directory too, by the way. That was you, right? Yeah, it was very helpful. Perfect.
Next we have a support staff leave request.
So my hope is not to go into the particulars of this individual, but we have a support staff who has some medical issues and has FMLA opportunities, but knows that this person will need longer than that to be able to come back to work. And we are looking, because it's beyond FMLA, we would need board approval to approve her leave of absence. And the intention is to return next fall.
Alright, if anyone has particular questions on this, I think those would best be done in executive session. Noting that, I'll then ask if there's a motion.
Devin, I'll make a motion to approve the request for leave as
Peter is
stated.
first, approve the requested leave of absence, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Jen is the second. Does anyone see a need for discussion on this that they'd like to bring to executive? Seeing none, alright, all those in favor of approving the leave of absence request, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions, I got it that time, Steve, thank you. Motion carries 9-0. Alright, we will now move down into our presentation and discussion section of the agenda. First up, we did rearrange these a little bit, so Kosha is first up
Okay.
with the continuous improvement plan.
Alicia, I will share the screen. Oh. Derek, you need to give me permission to share the screen.
Great, thank you, Julie.
There we go. I'm gonna try it again, folks, I apologize.
Great. So I'm just gonna review actually because we've already gone through the continuous improvement plan. So just wanted to do a quick review that this is our annual process of supporting our schools through continuous improvement. And in this slide, you see our mission statement for Mvsd, which is right out of our SEL competencies guide. And basically, this is our commitment that every year we are going to improve our instruction to make sure we are delivering high quality instruction to our students, getting better at it every year. And so students can thrive in whatever field that they choose to become and become real involved participants in society. This is the commitment from the Agency of Education. Vermont also is committed to continuous improvement of all our schools. It's based on the educational quality standards, and the Agency of Ed provides technical guidance to schools in order to help them with the process of continuous improvement. There's a whole framework which I've linked in there if anyone's interested, and it's based on improvement science. So we use those science, the basic research to help us with improving our schools. And so in this slide, you can see that it's a commitment from us, but it's also a commitment from the Agency of Ed to help support schools as we go through this process every year. As a district, we are committed to getting better and improving student outcomes. Every year, we create a continuous improvement plan to help guide the process. This plan was drafted and shared with the Board Goals Committee and the full board in June for stakeholder input. And then we had to submit it by August 1st, which we did, and it was approved by the Agency of Education on August 4th. We are now seeking board approval to move forward with this process. And I'm just going to review the goals that we put in there. As I mentioned before, this is a guiding document, so it has broad goals that we are committing to for this year. And it's based on data that we collect from 3 different areas, and we identify trends in. One is safe and healthy schools, the second one is academic achievement, and then the third one is attendance, engagement, and truancy. And these goals are right out of the same 3 pillars from the recovery plan, because those were the areas which were identified as all schools needing to have steps to improve those outcomes for students. We have to submit all our data to the Agency of Education through the data inventory tool. So we, over time, collect data from all our schools, and then we identify trends in each school and then come up with a district level, what are the different steps we need to take. So we take steps as a district, and then of course the schools do the implementation within each building. Here's the process. So the data is collected, and the leadership teams in each of our schools conducts a comprehensive needs assessment. So they look at their data, they identify what their problems of practice are, what strategies that they want to put in place, and then they prioritize their goals. They also consider how they're going to measure the outcomes of the strategies that they're putting in place, and they identify resources that they're going to need in order to implement those action steps. So just to review, our first goal under Safe and Healthy Schools this year is we want 100% of our staff to be trained in how to integrate social emotional learning into academics. Because one of the things we've realized through the pandemic is that our students' needs have definitely increased, and it can't be considered separate from academics. It's something that's embedded in what we do every day in the classroom. And so we already have a training plan in place, and we have different measures that we'll adopt from, doing reflective discussions with staff. We'll be measuring by tracking attendance. We'll be also tracking through walkthrough data and survey data as principals do these walkthroughs in their schools. In terms of what resources we need, we've already hired a consultant who's going to help us with this work. There will be, all our principals have made a huge commitment to spending time looking at the data and reflecting on the steps and seeing whether they're working or not, whether it needs to be changed. And then we also have a fiscal resource that we've allocated in terms of funding the consultant coming in, funding stipends for teachers who are on our SEL committee, and who work after school hours to help develop these action steps. Our second goal is academic achievement, and we are committed to improving that for sure. Our goal for this year is by spring of 2023, we will increase reading proficiency in the district from 41% to 50%. That was one of the numbers I heard a lot of our representatives here on the board saying, why can't we get to the 50%? So yes, we are going to strive to get to that 50%. And then in math, we want to improve our proficiency from 52% to 60% using the STAR 360 data. There's a slight difference in our goals because what we've seen over the past couple of years is that the benchmarks on STAR 360 are higher for ELA but lower for math. And so when we translate it into how will students perform on the SVAC, we need to really increase our math proficiency on STAR to make sure that they reach the benchmarks on SVAC. So that's why the difference. And then we're going to do this, of course, our number one priority is to improve first instruction. That is instruction for all students. And then also to keep working on our multi-tiered systems of support. So how do we provide support to students who need the supplemental education and then who need even more intensive support? So those are our two major steps for that. We will be monitoring student progress all through the year by looking at our data consistently over time, and especially monitoring those students who are at high risk. So we want to make sure students are already receiving intervention. We are monitoring those students even more often to make sure that they are on a trajectory to meet grade level standards, and then modifying, changing, adding any kind of interventions that may be needed for them. In preschool, we will be using TS Gold to monitor student progress. So they have a slightly different monitoring system. But in general, we'll be using a lot of diagnostic tools, and we also have a local assessment plan in place to not only do the screening data, but then to do diagnostics on students who we really want to find out what is preventing them from making those gains. And our third goal is attendance and engagement. As we've discussed for a long time, over the pandemic, we've seen a lot of our students becoming disengaged in learning. A lot of them have also not attended regularly, and some of them don't come to school as much as we would like them to come. And so our goal is really to make sure we are monitoring students who've been identified as being either at low, moderate, or high risk for truancy, and really making sure that we are putting supports in place to find out why they're not coming to school, what are the barriers, how we can support that. If students have developed anxiety about coming to school, we are providing them with different counseling options to help families and make sure students are able to come to school. We also have hired Celine Riendo as our outreach coordinator. She is going to be in year 2, and she's got a team together which is really going to develop our multi-tiered systems of support around attendance. So we are really hoping that in the next few months we'll have those systems in place. We'll not only have Celine who's overseeing everything, but have people at each building who are monitoring the students in their own building who are at risk for attendance. So we are also adopting a data management system called Educator, which is going to help us very quickly see students who are showing red flags for attendance. So it puts together the students' data, academic attendance, everything together, so that we can really monitor those kids and make sure that we are reaching out to families and making sure that they are getting the support they need.
How often does that data
That data actually automatically through Power School gets fed into EduClimber. So you can on any day, if you have concerns about a student, you can go in and log in and see what's happening with that student. And it also is color coded, so they have like red flags literally to help you to say, hey, the student's shown more than one day a week they're missing school, or they're more than that, so that we can quickly monitor those kids.
So what's the process once that happens? The flag comes up maybe
Yep.
multiple times.
Yeah, and then each school has their own EST team. So those EST teams will look at those kids who are at high risk and then designate a person, could be the guidance counselor, could be the principal, or whoever is sort of supporting the family to find out what is happening with that student and what might be some barriers for them.
Thank you.
I have a question, and that is, is this in addition to the goals that we have? There's I remember a couple of years ago showing us all the schools had their own goals that they had to meet. Is this in addition to that, or does this replace that? Because I noticed that you have something about the schools.
Good question. So this year, the Agency of Ed decided to streamline the process, and they said we want one district level continuous improvement plan, and each of our schools does create a plan for themselves. What we have to do is they added a new requirement this year. We are all now Title I school-wide schools, and so we have to create a Title I school-wide plan which replaces their continuous improvement plan. So I didn't want schools creating two different plans, so it'll be a school-wide plan, but it'll have the same goals, but specifically for that school. So in fall, I'll be working with each of the school level teams to create their school-wide plan.
Thank you.
I didn't know we were at questions, so I have a question.
Yeah.
Just back up slightly, for the academic achievement, how will the progress monitoring look to us throughout the year?
Yeah, so I have that in one of the slides where we'll be reporting out to the board 3 times a year. Whenever we finish our screening windows, the data is then analyzed by our coaches and leadership teams. They will then submit it to me, and I will be preparing a report for you.
And that's always going to be like relatively general to the schools, or are we gonna, without naming any students' names, be able to see like, because I'm just interested in seeing like what that looks like from like a student perspective. So especially in conjunction with the grading system, which we've changed this year, like how that looks, right? So and so started with like a 4, and then this is what we did, and then this is how they showed improvement. So just so that we can kind of see like how that looks.
I can certainly have one of our coaches come and show you if you're looking, like what does it look like on an individual student level, because what we can generate is actually a goal line for them based on their data. Once you collect 3 data points, it'll generate for you a trajectory, and then every time you progress monitor, you want to see if they're maintaining that line or not, and if they're not, then they will have to really sit down in their EST teams and think about what is not working for this student, what do we need to change, what do we need to do more of. Also, I've contacted Renaissance, which is the parent company of Star 360, and all our trainings are going to be geared on progress monitoring this year.
Okay.
So our coaches, interventionists, special educators, and administrators are always invited. We already have our first training set up for October 7th. So we are really going to be digging deeper into how do we monitor those kids, what do we do when they aren't meeting the goals. So as we use Star 360 more and more, we are getting more trained in how to use that data and make sure kids are staying on track.
So, Coach, it sounded like you have a bit more of a presentation, so we'll let you wrap that up and then we'll.
Sure.
One question.
Oh, no, there were a few here, so I'll let Coach finish and then we'll
Yeah.
pepper her afterwards.
This one, this is one of the requirements of the district level continuous improvement plan, which is equity support. This is actually based on 2018 data because that was the last round of SBAC that was reported by the state. And what they do is they look at subgroups of students who are considered to be under the historically marginalized, and they identified subgroups that certain schools are showing discrepancies in. So for example, it may be free and reduced kids versus non-free and reduced, special ed versus not special ed. If they see there's a big discrepancy between those two groups, they want the school to implement specific strategies to address those gaps. So what I put in there is for each of the schools, which were the equity gaps and what schools are specifically going to do to address those. And those are things that have to be reported back to the state. So that's what that slide shows. And the next one is the plan evaluation and revision. This is really, really important. We, I think, went through it last year through the recovery plan, and it was really beneficial. We had a team that was meeting every month to look at those strategies, and each school has representation on that team, and they were reporting back to the whole team how things were going in their school, what their data was showing. So we are going to continue with that same process this year. We won't have a recovery team. We are now going to call it our district continuous improvement team. We are going to meet every other month to collect that data, and then we will be reporting out to the whole district level admin team as well as to the board. The importance of this reflection piece is it really helps us to think about, are we doing something that's working for our kids or not working? Does it need to be modified, changed, or do we keep it the same? So those are the conversations that are going to be happening all through the school year. The team will meet every other month, but Joan Lumbra, who's a former math coach at Swanton, who I have convinced to help me again this year. She is phenomenal in data analysis, and we will be gathering that data. So she and I will meet every month to look at whatever data is coming in, and then the team will meet every other month so that we can keep looking at our practice and seeing whether things are working or not. And so the next one is steps we've already put in place so that all of you also know that. Under Safe and Healthy, we have a keynote next week, which is on SEL integration into academics. PBIS training is happening at Highgate and at Swanton. We have the second step curriculum that we bought to help support guidance. We have the SEL Web Universal Screener that we are going to pilot this year. And we also are continuing and expanding our art therapy services. We had an art therapist come in 2 days last year. It's expanding to 4 days. And that has really helped support some of our students who have developed major anxiety about coming back to school after the pandemic. So those are the steps that we are going to add and continue. Under academics, we will continue with our in-service data days. As I mentioned, the district CIP team will be meeting. We are adopting a new student data management system to really help us look at all the data for one student in one system. Reading and math screening and progress monitoring will be happening, and very exciting, we have a new math program that's being launched at MVU this year, and it's going to be a pilot year for elementary schools. So I was in fact at MVU this morning. They had a 2-day training yesterday and today for middle school as well as high school teachers. And I talked to the presenters, the trainers in both sessions, and they were really excited to work with our teachers and said, you know, a really good bunch of teachers. They're excited to have that. It's also going to be continuous. So it's not they're having 2 days and then nothing. They will be meeting virtually with the trainers to collect student data, look at it, and really talk about the implementation process, what's working, what's not working. So that's going to happen on a monthly basis. So we are really, really excited to have that happening. And then for attendance, as I said, we are continuing to have Celine work as our outreach coordinator. Data collection will be happening. We are creating systems of support to support those students who are at risk. And we also want to increase our place-based outdoor education for students who really have a hard time sitting in a classroom 7 hours a day. So we had contracted with Kurt Valenta, who's a local naturalist last year, and many of our teachers had taken advantage of working with him, and they're still teaching the curriculum. They're doing it outdoors. They're doing it in their community. I know Yeshua's teachers had great success with working with Kurt. So we just signed a new contract with him. So he's going to continue supporting that as well as project-based learning. So we are excited about continuing those things. And finally, as Terry asked the question, I put that in. All schools will be creating their individual school-wide plans, which will then identify the goals for their schools in terms of we look at the academic data for their school and create a reading and math goal for each school. Here's the data and reports. So district and school administrators review school data on a regular basis. You can talk to Joyce or Yeshua, they'll be telling you that. And then I will report out at district level data 3 times this year on November 1st, February 21st, and June 20th. Julie had asked me to provide that data, the dates. So I looked at the calendar for when your board meetings are and when our windows end, and I'm giving schools about 2 weeks to do their analysis and identify trends, so hopefully we'll be able to report out. Even though I said the curriculum director will report out, I will be working with principals to get those reports ready for you. And school administrators, I'm sure, will also be reporting out on their school's progress after their school level data has been analyzed. We'll also be gathering evidence and reflecting through our CIP team meetings. So that was the gist of the review of our continuous improvement plan. And if anybody has any more questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think I've been given my quota, so. That was great, thank you.
So Kosha, you're looking for the board to approve the continuous improvement plan, correct?
Yes, please.
Alright, so we'll get to more discussion in a moment. Is there a motion?
Before I make the motion, I'll make the motion to
Okay.
approve it. But can you talk just a little bit more about what Celine is proposing? I think we all received emails. Every board member, remember, we're getting an email from Celine.
I can do that.
Good, because I'm hoping that works. I had a good chat with her. It's a slight risk, that it won't, but if we can get the business community engaged. So I was thinking as I was reading it, maybe as a school board, we should at some time just talk about, does the school board in some way want to kind of support? I think she's going to give away $25 gift certificates, right? And 9 more gift certificates would really help the class.
Yeah.
End of message.
Yeah, I mean, providing positive incentives for students to attend rather than just saying, hey, you've been truant. We want to really help support families. And I mean, she did a lot of home visits last year and really figured out what were those barriers for those students and help support that. As I said, we are hoping to build capacity within each building also to support the students. And the more we do that, the more we'll be able to get them back into our schools. And also really, as I mentioned before, really thrilled to be able to increase our art therapy services to 4 days a week, 2 days at MVU, because we have a lot of students there struggling with anxiety and other issues post-pandemic, and then at Highgate and Swanton, and we have Franklin on standby. If any students need that, she will be available for that too. And she did provide services to some of the students who had been receiving services in last spring over the summer also. So we really want to support those kids.
So we have a motion on the table to approve the continuous improvement plan. Is there a second? I'll second. Terry's the second. So I was looking that way. Eating seconds tonight.
This is not your night.
All
You
right.
do it first, but it's all.
I'm just gonna stop.
Is there any discussion? Rennick, would you like to go first?
No, I'm all set, that was great. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion or questions on continuous improvement plan? Seeing none, Steve, I can't see you right now, so if you have anything,
Let me
feel
stop
free to
the
just
share here.
speak up. All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving continuous improvement plan as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries 9-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kosha. All right, we're on to the board development and goals update.
Boy, I need to share again.
Terry, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. I think Julie's gonna share something, just to let you all know that the board development committee did get together, was it just last week? Last week, and we talked about some of the things we told you, the last board meeting, we reported out and said that we weren't quite sure we wanted to go with the vision statement yet, so we came up with one that we'd like to propose. And if you have questions, I just wanna let you know that there was a process that went into this, where we were looking at different, the things that we really wanted to get in, the enthusiasm, there were ingredients that we wanted to make sure we got in there, such as the high expectations, the enthusiasm, the excellence that we had mentioned during the retreat. We also wanted to get in the portrait of the graduate. And then we also liked the idea when someone said any chosen path, the student's chosen path. So this is what we came up with when we envisioned this as signs and something students see, teachers see, the community sees. So we'd love your feedback and what your suggestions might be. And our committee can add anything if they want. Can everybody see it?
Jen?
Couple questions. So this is gonna be on the MVU, or is this on, well, not just MVU, this is gonna be on every school's opening page, correct? For parents and students to see,
That would we like to
teachers
do. And I did notice something with Kosha had a different mission statement, but this really vision, so.
That was the mission statement of our social emotional learning competencies that we get.
Okay. We got a lot of these hanging around.
That's why we talked about a vision,
Which
because
is-
every school has a vision.
Which is why Jen's bringing up her point.
I want, I would like everybody to be able to see it, and I read it to myself today, like 5 times, and I love how, high expectations for students, staff, and families. My concern, and maybe it's just me, is that we're telling parents, we have these high expectations of you. Just the way it's worded, that part. We do have I love the high expectations for students and staff. I just wish that we could have, maybe like, we have a high expectation for family participation in supporting their students.
What if we said high expectations for students, staff, and community?
I would like that better, me personally. Cause
Because
you're
I
not,
think that's what we're getting at, right? That the community has high expectations,
Yeah.
everyone has high expectations.
it's just me as, if I was like, oh, you have high expectations for me, huh? No. That's just,
Oh, you think so?
but you know what I'm saying?
I
Just
do,
like,
I hear
like
you.
maybe like I like the community, it's more of a nicer rounded way to bring that out.
I think that's a really good point. How about the rest of the committee? No, good with that?
So are we eliminating families?
And it
Not
says
eliminating,
the
but
community.
eliminating. That might be a good school.
I think the suggestion, right, is that we replace families with community.
I like it.
Right. Sweet, thanks. Ready?
I'm good with that.
Devin, Joanne? So the committee's okay, what about the rest of everybody? Thank you, Jim.
The only thing that stuck out to me, and you kind of explained it, and you when you read it, but any was the only word that stuck out to me because I don't know, just seemed like any is really wide open. I was thinking if you along the path they choose, it's still the path they choose, but any seems way too vague to me.
We did have this conversation about saying along a chosen path, and we wanted to be sure that we left in they choose. It seems to work for me along
On the path they choose.
along the path they choose. Because it's kind of that in between what we were talking about before. We didn't want to say chosen path because it sounds like
We
other
didn't wanna
people might be
choose for
choosing
them.
it. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I think that's good.
I'm good with that.
I'm getting picky, so tell me that, but is they the proper pronoun there? I mean, you know, we talk a lot about gender neutral,
Oh, good
so
point.
just,
I think they would be if we're gender neutral. I think grammatically it's okay, right? And then also gender neutral, it is they. I think that's pretty neutral, isn't it? Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Or you could put a student choose, or you could put student choose.
Well, we could. I thought that they was like non-binary, so we could.
just reason,
No, I think it's an excellent point. Who knew we were being,
make sure you get the action.
who knew we were being inclusive? Well, we did, right? We did it for us.
The changes it then along the path they choose.
It looks like what I've heard so far is the path and switching out families for community.
So I'll also say one of the things that we talked about as a committee is that it's long there, you're seeing it all, but it's also modular. There's lots of pieces you can pull out and represent just on its own. You know, if you want something short and snappy, I think was the phrase that came up. You know, you can get rid of the Missisquoi Valley School District, right? You can just go with Mvsd supports students. Start with that, and even end before you get to portrait of graduate. That can be a separate piece, and then you can play with those other three items one at a time or as a group. So that was, as we talked about branding and showing in all schools and using it. That was kind of.
So where are parents in all of this? Because for years, in education, I've had teachers and other educators come and say, we need to have a partnership with parents. And I don't see anything in there that would tell me.
Then you're,
That was the families
Yeah.
piece that.
so it's not all parents though, Don, I mean.
No, I'm not saying that, but we took families out. And-
Right.
And I don't disagree with that, but the more I think about it, families would include parents.
But
So
not
maybe
all
we
kids
should-
have parents, sometimes they live with their grandparents. Or their aunts or their uncles.
And that's why families was in there,
I
but
tend to use families rather than parents in my communication for that very reason.
I'm not saying put
Yeah.
parents in, but by taking families out, I'm wondering if we're taking,
they would have to be part of the communities, like your community. And
maybe I talk with the wrong parents, they don't simply see themselves as part of the community.
Point, we could say families and community, but does that address your situation, John? I mean, what you took away from that?
We spent a lot of time talking about wanting to talk about high expectations for everyone, including families in our partnership, engage with your family. But we also don't wanna sound judgmental, which is, I think, what your concern is there.
Yeah.
So that becomes the balance there, is how we word that.
Could you do a double sentence, high expectations for students and staff. Period. With support from family and community members.
Students as families and community members, yeah.
But you were saying in support from families and community members. You know, personally,
So can we add it at the end of a culture of excellence driven by families and communities? Or just shove a word that connects families and communities after a culture of excellence? So that way we've got a little bit on each line and not so much on high expectations.
Right. So you do another bullet, so you would do,
Well, I would just add to the culture of excellence.
we want the teachers and students to have that.
yeah, cause I mean, your main thing to me would be, you've got your high expectations of your students and your staff. That's like your main,
Stuff after staff.
Do you solve it by not delineating student, staff, and families? By just saying high expectations of all in our school community or something like that, that makes it
Right, high
broader
expectations.
rather than listing?
yeah,
High
I
expectations.
would like,
Because I know that you wanted it to be short and snappy.
I like that.
so high expectations, one more time.
Just high expectations. At MVSD, we have high expectations, enthusiasm for teaching and learning, and a culture of excellence. Right, we okay with that? I was gonna suggest that we keep it, instead of families, community, because truly, I mean, it does take a village, and we want high expectations. We want the whole community to be proud, and to have high expectations that students in this community or people in this community are gonna thrive. And that's why we had put in community, that's why community makes sense. And however, if we just say high expectations, we're inferring all that, and maybe it is shorter and snappy. That's just my 2 cents. I kinda like the idea of I kinda like involving the community. I think I prefer that we say high expectations of students, staff, and community.
I think the communities and families make sense, and then if there was another way somewhere to add families, but I do understand your point for not. So, I think everyone would understand that families are part of the community. I don't think that's a stretch at all. And then that way there's no one to say, even though Donna say families are not a part of the community, I mean, we're not gonna catch everything. So, I think that's simple and to the point. And as we saw in the board goals meeting, like we could just kind of keep going round and round about one. So I think that captures the spirit of what we're trying to say.
Before we go, I'd like to hear what Joanne said again, because I like that, what she said. You forgot all of it.
You mean what I just said or what I said last week? 'Cause
Well,
you
you said
don't-
here, a culture of excellence for families and communities, so
Well,
just.
driven by families and communities. I used the word driven, but we could use any other word. I was
I
just
like
trying
the
to
idea
like,
that we talk about families and communities on a separate line from high expectations, which I think you said students and staff.
yeah, I was just cutting it at staff.
Okay, so that's another option out there.
So we've heard a few options. Would anyone like to make a motion around one of them? And then we can discuss and vote and move to the next if we need to.
Can we just get clear on what that second option was? Cause it's not, like this first option is kind of there, we can take out families, we can take out any pretty easily. But the one Don just discussed is
High,
the
we do high expectations for students and staff, enthusiasm for teaching and learning, and a culture of excellence for
Families.
and communities.
driven by.
Driven. I like that motion, vote it up or down.
Okay, so Don has made a motion,
Joanne has made a motion.
and Don's motion would be for it to say, the Missisquoi Valley School District supports students in finding success along the path they choose, guided by our portrait of a graduate. At MVSD, we have high expectations for students and staff, enthusiasm for teaching and learning, a culture of excellence driven by families and community. Is that correct?
So,
Did I miss something?
so you wanna, sorry, but
So-
you wanna say at Mvsd, the first two are good, and then you wanna say a culture of excellence driven by families and
Community. So families is struck from that first bullet, and then family and communities is added to.
a culture of excellence driven, but that's an outward in projection.
So that is the motion.
That's the motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
So what's the concern on the last line?
Was you're just saying a
Can we-
culture of excellence driven by the families and community, but we're
Supported.
because we're supposed to be driving things. We're not
Okay,
trying, we're not
so
asking them.
supported, okay. Are you okay with changing
Sure, I
driven
am.
to support?
I'm trying to get something done, but more than that, I wanna get something that makes sense, so. I
So-
like what Joanne said. If Joanne's acceptable, I like what you say better.
I would just, if we're gonna say that, then
Yeah.
say a culture of excellence to support families and communities, because that's what we're trying to do.
No problem with that. I never tried to write it perfect the first
Yeah.
or second time.
Alright, so Don's okay amending it to say, that third bullet, a culture of excellence. Can you say that again?
To support families and the community.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Joanne's a second, alright, we have a first and a second, any discussion on that one?
Is this something we have to vote on tonight? Can we,
Well,
I'm sorry.
we do now.
I just got- I
So this is nice to have. What are we gonna do with it?
Terry, you wanna talk about that? Or you want me to?
Well, actually, what we hoped was that we'd have we have this, the portrait of a graduate that's gonna drive and guide a lot of what we do. And we're gonna have a visual of this. And we'd like to have this, and in fact, the way it was written with the change that Joanne had suggested, that we would highlight, or we would use different fonts, or we would have different colors to really bring out the main points. And we would use it and put it everywhere, be like, people have this and you just, okay. So we know that you can say this pretty easily, that, the Mvsd supports students in, I thought I could say it easily, but not, of course, I'm tongue-tied, in any path they choose. Finding success in success in the path they choose. And then we have high expectations, maybe we should just leave it at that, high expectations, enthusiasm for learning and teaching, and culture of excellence. It's pretty easy to say and memorize, of course, our committee probably would say that easier, but it doesn't have to be exactly the wording, it just has to be the essence. And the essence that we're saying is, students thrive, they find success, they have a say in what they do, that we have we support that, and that we have high expectations, and that we are enthusiastic, excited, culture of excellence.
I'd say this is getting at that central why that we talked about during our retreat. This is,
I guess I just didn't like how the last sentence flowed, especially after what I just said.
What don't you like? I couldn't hear.
She doesn't like the amendment to the third bullet
Yeah,
point.
a culture of excellence driven by. I don't like
Supported.
or
Supported.
Yeah,
I mean, I was accepting just the culture of excellence, but then we're trying to include
Family and
family
communities.
and communities, which is, I think, really the only sticking point that we're at with, which is high expectations for students and staff, everyone's good with, and community, and then enthusiasm for teaching and learning, everyone's good there, culture of excellence, everyone's good, but then there's that last bit that Dawn would like put in, which is reflecting somehow families in there, but without reflecting families in there. So I think that's the only thing that's up for debate. So I think Joanne should just decide.
No, there's a motion.
There's a motion.
Yeah, there's a motion.
We have a motion,
We have a motion. My thought is that I like the simple substitution of families for community, so I intend to vote no on this one and see if we get to that one. Alright, any more discussion? No? Alright, so we will vote on this one, which, try it one more time. We're substituting any for the in the top part, and then in our 3 bullets, we will have high expectations for students and staff, enthusiasm for teaching and learning, a culture of excellence supported by families and the community. Did I get that right?
Nicely done.
Alright. Those in favor of the vision statement as read, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay, we'll do ayes again. They were slow coming. Do I have 3 ayes?
Yes.
3 ayes. Those opposed?
No.
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 Abstentions? You're abstaining?
Yeah.
Okay, the motion fails 3-5-1. Alright, would anyone like to make a second motion? The answer to your question, do we have to do it tonight?
But we're doing it tonight, Devin.
Alright.
Let's do this.
Jen has answered the question. Alright, would anyone like to make another motion?
Can I make a motion to adopt policy as the Missisquoi Valley School District supports students in finding success along the path they choose, guided by our portrait of graduate. At Mvsd, we have high expectations for students, staff, and the community. Is that right? The community?
Yeah.
The community, enthusiasm for teaching and learning, and a culture of excellence. For culture of excellence.
Okay, so we have our motion from Rennick to adopt the vision statement as he just read. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is Jen. Alright, any discussion on that? Seeing none. Alright. Those in favor of the vision statement as read, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? That motion carries 9-0. Alright. Thanks everyone on that. Anything else, Terry, from that committee?
If anyone else wants to add anything, thank you all. We did have a few other things that we discussed and that had to do with some of the things that Devin talked to you about last time in terms of the makeup of our meetings and some of those kinds of things. And we will send out some minutes from that meeting or to get you up to it. I will find my notes. Okay, sorry we didn't do that sooner, but that was one of the commitments we made to the rest of you, so we'll definitely do that.
Alright, thanks Terry. Okay, that brings us to the facilities committee, facility project update. Peter, would you like to start that?
Sure, so, facility project update, so we met last evening. I was appointed chair of the facilities committee. I say appointed because we kind of asked for volunteers to step forward and everybody took a step back and I was kind of
Oh, come on. You were begging to be the chair.
okay.
Actually, we had Laura as a chair for 4 or 5 months because we didn't step up.
We're gonna fix that little problem.
Alright, so all joking aside here, so the updates I really can go through quick because John kind of went over it already, the Highgate Hvac, we all went through that today. The only thing I'd written down is supposed to be completed by Friday, as he told us. I'm sure there'll be some other small things that need to be updated along the way, but pretty much as we saw today, very good project and it is coming to completion. The MVU roof project, phase 1, is about complete from everything we were told. I guess there was one electrical, some damage on some underground electrical wires going out to the scoreboards, I believe, in the athletic fields. Not a major problem, but that will get fixed. Just waiting for, I think, some conduit to come in to fix that. The big thing with that, this was a project that was budgeted at $1,085,000 and actually came under budget, Don, so that was a good thing. So it looks like we are going to save about $55,000 on that project, so we will be billed $55,000 less than what we budgeted for. So that's good news there. So the Swanton controls for their HVAC and controls there is pretty much done, but there are 7 valves that were back ordered. Looks like they won't be coming in until later this fall. I've got a note, Columbus Day weekend, October 14th through the 17th is when they're supposed to be installing those. And I think John guaranteed no snow before that, so we're in good shape there. Franklin Control and Insulation, that project is going well. It looks like that should be closing up later this week or next week. Looks like 24th, 25th. I didn't take as good a notes as I should have, so I reached out to Jason today on where we're at with the walk-in coolers, and John also kind of updated us on that. So Jason reported that the walk-in cooler and freezer in Highgate have had the new mechanical components installed. They are currently waiting for the electrician to do the final wiring. As soon as that's complete, should be in the next day or two, we can move all of the frozen food from Swanton back to Highgate and get it going and get the project going in Swanton. So that should be happening early next week. And then we got the MVU locker room project that we've discussed before. That project is about 95% complete. They've still got to finish the girls' locker room bathroom. CSI will be in to start the plumbing work for the booster booth sinks. Did a walkthrough with Bob's Electric today, and he has them scheduled to start Monday. PC Construction, waiting for the 3-man doors for the locker rooms and the 1-man door for the booster booth. Those should be arriving in the next 3 weeks. And then we have the new roll-up window that's supposed to be installed for the booster for that booth. And that should be here in the next 8 to 10 weeks. So the plan is to do as much as possible when the items arrive and finally finish with the roll-up door as soon as that arrives as well. So that's where we're at with the projects, the summer projects that were going on in our district. And then finally, the Franklin instructional space proposal. The committee moved to have that brought to the full board for a decision on that.
Alright, thanks Peter. So that does bring us to the ARP ESSER funded project in Franklin with action on here. Dawn, would you like to make a motion on this?
Sure. And the reason I asked, one of the many reasons I asked Devin to do this is I think we need a motion on the floor. Sometimes we get into a lot of discussions, here, there, and everywhere with this project, but other times too, and I think we get a motion, we go from there. Anybody that's been watching any of our meetings in the last 2 years know we've talked a lot about ESSER funds and programs and buildings and whatever. So I've worked with some assistants from non-board members, board members. So this is the motion. The Missisquoi Valley School District Board approves spending up to $4.1 million of ESSER funds on the Franklin Elementary School construction project. Okay, we're gonna get construction. Should any additional funds be required to complete this project, those costs will be proposed to all voters to take appropriate action. When I say all voters, maybe you want to put in the Mvsd also. And that's there because some of us, in some of the towns, mainly Swanton, but I think it may have had other places, there's been questions and pushback, and people wanting to vote on it. And we do not want people to vote on the 4.1 million ESSER money. That has been decided, and we have the authority to do it. Based on what John has told us multiple times, with a 10% contingency, I think 4.1 is a very safe number. John, if you don't think so, say now or hold your breath.
I believe it is.
A little side that has no relevance to this, but because I'm buying stuff almost weekly from building supply, it's starting to hold or go down a little bit. So you put those two factors in, I think 4.1 is a very safe number. And I have to depend on EEI, they're doing this every day, I'm not. So 4.1. But should we exceed that, we would not go to ESSER monies, we would ask the citizens in some manner to add that. Will that have to happen? I bet my paycheck is never had to happen, but I think it's a good safeguard. Continuing with this action is a first, and you've heard me say this many times, you've heard other board members say, this action is a first step in a multi-year commitment from the Mvsd board representing the towns of Franklin, Highgate, and Swanton to build and or renovate our educational facilities to meet student needs. I think that's one of the first things I said in Franklin. This is the beginning, not the end. So that would be my motion. And that would kick in gear.
Can you say
moving
that
forward.
one more time? I missed the first part of it. Can you say that last part one more time?
This action is a first step in a multi-year commitment from the Mvsd board representing the towns of Franklin, Highgate, and Swanton to build and or renovate our educational facilities to meet student needs. I think we've said that multiple times. I have, and I think other people have said it too.
Do you have that written down in front of you, Don, that you can give
Right
us
here,
later for
yes.
the, okay.
I can give it to you after, because I've got to get
Yes.
the word construction in, because when it says approve, school project, I think it's school construction project. Yep.
Would anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Peter is a second, alright. So
So I think basically the motion, whether it passes or not, the goal is to move the dial and give PEI go ahead to work with Laura and all the other people around here.
Alright, any discussion on that motion? Frank?
I have a question. So, can you just kind of elaborate why putting this to a vote, a public vote, is a bad idea again? Because just elaborate why that's.
Why I've added the public vote if we go with 4.1?
No, why? So why is that not? Obviously, you have the authority to do so, but why is that not a contingency now, a part of the discussion now, for this amount of money?
So why not have a public vote on the 4.1 million? Is the question.
I guess you could, but I think that the way from the get-go, with the ESSER funds, it was decided that we as a board had the authority to make those decisions.
Yeah, it's not a question of authority. I know we have authority, but I mean, why not have that? Because so devil's advocate, I actually think the project in and of itself is great, but I have a concern that with the difficulty that we've had passing budgets, and with one of the few things that does come up, and I do hear from constituents, which is, what have you done with the COVID money? That when we look back and we say, well, we took this 4 million and we did that, wow, a good project. I see a little pushback from them saying, well, either I didn't know about it, or that's not maybe what I would have done with it for something like this. So I would have thought maybe adding it to a vote or something to where, hey, we put it out there to vote on something, either we didn't get turnout, whatever, and then we still do what we should. I mean, I'm just wondering why that wasn't considered.
Why that's not in my motion. I mean, I was not opposed early on if that had risen early on. But why that's in my motion, I think we are at a point in time where we either move forward or we don't move forward, and we could put ourselves behind the 8 ball. So, you know, for advisory vote, and I know because I've talked to some people who that, I just don't think the timeliness of it now, to move this. And after all the discussion opportunities, this probably goes against some of my basic beliefs, but I think the time is now to say yes and go do it. I'm gonna put Terry on the spot, but Terry, I think it was the other night, you said something about maybe we should have mailed a postcard to everybody in the beginning on the ESSER funds in this project. You know, hindsight's 20/20. If I was gonna start over, would we do it differently? I don't know. But personally, I like what I put forward. Laura's,
I don't dislike it, Dawn, I'm not trying to argue with you, I'm a little concerned about making it all one motion, only because
would you stop it off the
One-
first part and then make a
and
second
make a
motion?
second, because then I can
Okay.
submit in the minutes that approval of the project at the quoted amount is 4.1, and then when I submit to the AOE, part of what I have to do is check a box saying I am guaranteeing a funding source, and the funding source is 100% completion with Art Esser. I can check that in good faith in the assurances, and then the second part is really separate, because we'd have to address that separately anyway, is what you're saying, so if you were comfortable with that, I think it would satisfy the AOE requirements.
I guess I'm not
Esser.
comfortable with saying that if we need extra money, we'll go back to ESSER.
No, I mean, just leave it at the 4.1, the first part, and
Not
make,
to exceed.
yeah, not to exceed 4.1, and make the other part a second motion,
Okay, oh, I see.
if that's okay, that would
Okay,
be
so the
cleaner for,
MVSD board approves spending up to $4.1 million of EFFER funds on the Franklin Elementary School project, construction project, period. That's one motion.
yes,
Then there'll be a second motion with the rest of it.
because I have a guarantee for that contract amount, which will be 4.1 or not to exceed 4.1, so when I have to check that box and say I have the funding for that, and then I can guarantee that, and that's one of the requirements, yeah,
That's reasonable.
okay.
Actually, I have a question about
So,
that.
Go ahead,
hang on,
Eric.
first I've gotta turn to Peter, are you okay with it?
I agree with the amendment.
Alright, so we have a new motion now, which is simply, which is shorter, just the first part, to approve up to 4.1 million for investment fund. Terry?
I do have a question about that, because if you dilute the motion by taking the rest of it off, it's not the same motion.
We'll have another motion, a second motion.
Does the second motion count towards the first, or how does that work? I don't know enough about the rules, like,
I
isn't
think-
it separated?
They're two separate motions, yeah.
But they're combined, it's just one goes to AOT and one goes to us, I don't get that.
Sorry, to the Agency of Education was how I'm going to answer it, but, sorry.
Yeah, so, yeah, one, this is my interpretation, so correct me if I'm wrong here, Laura. One allows us to say that allows Laura, when she's filling out the paperwork, to say that we have approved up to $4.1 million. Stop. Next, Don sounds like he will make a second motion to then essentially limit board action on any funds beyond 4.1 in the future if we need to exceed the 4.1, to say we're a motion right now that would bind the future us to go to the full public if we had to request funds beyond 4.1.
Okay, but it's also that other part that's in there.
And yes, sorry,
And the other
you're
part,
absolutely right.
it's all
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
So it'll all be in the minutes combined, it's just part one, part two? Or, I mean, it's motion one,
Motion one,
As
two?
far as the
Motion
state's concerned, they'll never see motion two.
Right, because that would probably be a separate complete conversation and contract or addendum or whatever, but they don't necessarily need to know
Okay.
about that right now.
It's the old days of grants of supplant or supplement. You know?
Yes.
You never tell them you're supplanting, they always supplement.
So do we need to do something different, like Robert's rules, or can I kind of address what Don and Brennan can?
So right now the motion is just the first shortened part because Don and Peter were both amenable to that amendment. So discussion on the second part we'll save for once that motion's on the floor. So the motion is for the MVSD board approves spending up to $4.1 million of ESSER funds on the Franklin Elementary School project. Construction projects. That's the motion. Any other discussion on that piece of the motion?
Yes.
Terry?
And this has to do with voting, and why we don't go to voting, but for me, it's more about involvement, and promise, and, working together, everyone, and making sure that there's some kind of, so if we don't vote, I think it's really incumbent that we do something, some improved communicating, because just having meetings is not okay. It's not the way you reach people these days. You know, some communities are great about it, other communities aren't. And so I think we need to do more postcards, we need to do more, not everybody's on social media, especially the age range. And oftentimes we reach out to people that have kids in the school, and that's why we have their emails. I think we need to do more of reaching out to different populations. Otherwise, they don't feel like they're part of MVSD. They feel like they're just taxpayers, you know?
Can I just add to that something?
Yep.
I did reach out to the towns as you requested and asked that they please share that information before the meeting about the informational meeting and the project on any communication that they felt would be appropriate. Whether that be, and I suggested signage or email or websites, and I listed those out. I believe that was done, but the communication back to me was not existent. I believe it did happen. I would love to have some support from a board member maybe to make those connections maybe a little bit stronger with.
Yeah.
Because me sending an email as a business manager maybe doesn't have the same impact as maybe a board member going and talking about how that they can help us with communication. Just a little plug for that, I guess, because similar as budget season, you know, I try to, because they have email lists and things that we don't have.
I am not putting this at your doorstep.
Oh, no,
for
but I
sure.
mean, I think it would be
It wouldn't be
a better conversation starter
Yeah,
than
but
me coming
trust
from me
me,
and adding
I
something
think
to
we've
the
all
list of
learned
to-dos.
from this whole process. We've never, as a board working together, we've not had this kind of money to spend on one fell swoop. And I think that we're learning a lot in terms of how we involve the community. That's just my 2 cents here. And we'll get better.
So
We'll
I
do
did communicate with the Swanton trustees, selectmen, and I went beyond and Swanton, at least state reps, because I think they should be involved more than they are. And I got a response from one. So I don't know if a board member makes much difference.
Even in regards though to just their simple means of communication, if they're willing to support communications of the school board through their venues also,
Yeah.
I think might be a better received from a board member than maybe an employee of the board.
I do have something I'd like to read, a statement, at least but from my perspective, and that's really all I wanna share. I kind of anticipated this motion, so I think it'll take about 3 minutes to read and then I'll be done if now's okay.
Now it's fine.
All right, I wrote this down because I wanted to make sure I touched on everything that I felt about this project. So here it goes. As you all know, I am a non-ranking junior member of the Facilities Committee. I began my journey on the committee this March. I have been spending these first few facility meetings primarily observing the workings and dynamics of the committee. My short-term time on the Facilities Committee has opened my eyes to our future building challenges. We will, sooner rather than later, have to ask our voters for additional significant allocations for capital projects. The committee, Mvsd administrators, and our performance contractor have put considerable time and consideration into this proposed project. I appreciate all the work they have done. I too have been considering this project with great intensity and deliberation, especially over the past few weeks. I'm not questioning the need for more educational space at one of our school buildings, but I have 3 significant hesitations about this proposed project. 1, I'm struggling to reconcile that our student population attending our school at Franklin has a greater need or has been more severely impacted by COVID than our student populations attending our schools at MBU, Swanton, or Highgate. Our student performance data over many years and today does not seem to support that the student population attending our school at Franklin has a greater need. Our building administrators, teacher and staff retention rates and student truancy rates do not seem to support the greater need at Franklin either. 2, the Highgate White building weighs on me heavily. We know the shelf life of that building. I recognize possibilities of transformative change at our Highgate location, which ties into my number 3, more philosophical hesitation. Number 3, I'm struggling to see how this proposed project will contribute to a transformative delivery of a pre-K to 12 educational experience for MVU students, their families, and all our taxpayers. Relatedly, I'm also wondering if the timeline to use this COVID money is driving this decision, rather than a more important long-term vision of where the Mvsd board and community wants the Mvsd to go. I often wonder what conversations must have been like 50 some odd years ago when the brave and wise leaders of Franklin, Swanton, and Highgate formed our MVU. That was a Herculean change event with a substantial result. Here we are 50 years later, after another arguably imperfect union. The Mvsd now has an opportunity to use some of these once-in-a-lifetime COVID dollars to possibly expand our footprint. I have not given up hope for similar significant and transformative change for our Mvsd, or from our Mvsd. In many ways, this proposed $4.1 million proposed projection is more than just a building addition, but also a gauge of the health of our newly merged Mvsd and a reflection upon where the Mvsd is going. I'm fully aware and acknowledge that our board is not required to hold a public advisory vote on this proposed allocation of COVID federal dollars. However, my conscience has been telling me we should. So it is with a heavy mind, yet also great optimism about the future of our Mvsd, our children, and our community. I am unable to support this proposed project without seeking voter input in the form of an advisory public vote. I will be voting no on the motion as read.
All right, thank you, Toby.
You made some great points.
Any other discussion?
I guess as the maker of a motion, I'm sure that gentleman who just spoke realizes that can be amended. So I'm not gonna call it a friendly amendment. So we do have the option to amend it, which would delay the action on the project. To be honest with you, and now I'm speaking unofficially, I don't think it'll change the outcome. I think what I've said tonight will happen. Well, some of it will, the money will go, hopefully the second part will happen too. But I hear you and I hear Remick, and I said some of the same words, so Peter wants to speak.
Peter?
So, what I say may not be popular, and I am always for community vote and to understand, and I believe we should have all the information out there for everyone to see. But I do not feel that this is something that should be voted on by the district, because I feel it's an equity issue. If we are only going to do projects that will be approved by the district, we're only going to be doing projects where the majority of the district lies. So in a small community like Franklin, we will never have the votes to complete a project, and we will always be the last to receive the monies if we're always counting on the district vote to approve it.
So I'll say that I'm gonna disagree with you a little bit, Peter, and maybe it's aspirational, but I think I've heard Toby say it a lot about us moving our mindset to a single district. You'll notice Toby's language, he does not refer to a Franklin school, a Highgate school, a Swanton school, he refers to them as buildings. I've tried to do that recently as well, after he pointed that out to me maybe a couple months ago. And I think that's an important shift that our board to some extent has made well on certain topics, and this is a topic where some of that old we're three separate towns mentality has come up. I'm hoping that we can be the leaders to try to start that culture change, where we really are one single district that has multiple locations. And so I hope that our community, when we propose, and I say when because as Don has in his next motion, we've got a list of things coming. When we propose projects in any of our locations, that our community doesn't treat it as, I'm only gonna vote for my town's projects and nobody else. I'm gonna hold on hope that we as a group of Swanton, Highgate, Franklin, are better than that, I guess, say bluntly. That we will evaluate projects. We understand these are all our kids that are in our community that go to MVU together. Many of them live and work here in Franklin County, in St. Albans, and, just down the road. This is all still part of our community, and so I'll push back on that. It's not project related here, but I just really want to say that clearly because I'm afraid of going down the road of division. We'll be a dysfunctional district if we let that take hold. So those are my thoughts. Terry?
Can I just add something to that? I think I've shared this with you, Peter, that if we're talking about buildings, for me, the concern is that we'll always only have a limited amount of money. So it'll be the buildings that don't require as much that we'll put the money in. For example, right now, but of course there is need that adds into it, like most precedent. And the bigger projects are gonna be at the MVU or at the Swanton building. And that's gonna be really hard. I mean, we've got a taxpayer base that we've all discussed, which is why I think Toby makes some really good points. And I've shared this with you all, Devin too, with that I agree we need to be one union, one district. And we're gonna have some tough challenges ahead. We need to not think in terms of towns. We need to think in terms of what are we gonna do that's sustainable, that works for our students and works for the taxpayers. And that's why I like that second part of that motion, that we're committed, that we're gonna take care of all these towns. And we might have to change the way we do business. But we gotta start now thinking about it, because we are gonna need some transformational change to make this union work, to make this district work.
Yes, Don?
At some point, I'm gonna call for a vote on this. I talked to Devin today and said I wanna make that motion. Some people will probably say Peter should make that motion because Peter's now chair of the facilities committee. I think this motion needs to come from someone other than someone with close attachment to Franklin, to be honest with you. Because we do wanna build that we are a group of people with a large group of students who happen to live in different geographical areas. In fact, I live in the village of Swanton, and some people there don't even want to acknowledge that West Swanton is part of our town, but we do. But I think the time is to move on. Maybe we can fault ourselves for maybe not doing everything quite perfectly, but I think we need to do this. And I really do believe that we are going to work together, because we're gonna have to work together. They put children in our hands. How many do we have, 2,000 students?
About 1,800.
And they elect us to be responsible. I don't know what's gonna happen to all of you, no matter how this vote comes out, but if this passes, I can tell you that the same people who have been telling me that I dropped the ball and not doing a very good job, maybe I shouldn't be on the board. I'm just gonna tell them, tough. I got 3 years to live that long, and that's the way it should be for the children. So we can keep discussing it, but I would ask you at some point to call vote on that.
Alright. Any final comments, questions, Rennick?
Yeah, so I just want to say, I actually really support the project. I think it's an excellent project. The only thing that I look at, and I just kind of wanted to make that something that we really consider, is that we have difficulty passing budgets, and that's going to get harder, especially as some of these funds go away. And so I wish there was a sort of different way to chop it up, if that makes sense. So like the HVAC project for Highgate, which we bonded and like kind of got a little bit of that. I wish there was a different way to allocate it so that all the same things could be done, but the way that we specifically use the COVID funds, when it came time to say what we did with the COVID funds, was done differently, because I do see there's times when things come up and there's other times when it's like, well, we were talking about it and it doesn't come up. And I just, again, specifically holding on budget terms, and unfortunately, like ESSER money and COVID money, I just would have liked to see maybe some things done differently in terms of like exhausting all ways, so that we can just say that, hey, we did everything possible to make sure that the information was transmitted to everybody, and that there was no other way to like use it. So I think the motion passed, but I just wanted to say that was the only thing I had concern about. I actually think the project's great, but I just, that particular piece, you know, when we're discussing in March, people have a particular memory. So that was the only thing I wanted to say.
Thanks, Frank. Joyce, you had something on that?
Well, I just wanted to thank the task force and Chris Shepherd, because they have done so much since that task force was created. And I think they worked long and hard, really diligently, to come up with how they were gonna prioritize projects and what the criteria should be for those projects. And I just kinda wanna go back to student need, because in no way am I trying to say that the students in Franklin have more of a need than anybody in any other school. I just was talking to Tara earlier this evening about, I've tried really hard to not be comparing us to other schools. But these, in terms of student needs, we don't have the spaces to provide for these needs right now. And these spaces, and Terry's told me I should go ahead and say it last night, these spaces are available at other schools for their students. And so the essential needs that we talked about are available right now in other schools, and we don't have them in Franklin. And the last couple of years have made that situation much worse. And the facilities assessment that was done, we were the only school that they identified as lacking instructional space. And I really feel badly here. I hear everything everybody is saying, but I also feel like this has been talked about for quite a while, and I wish people would have talked about, having a vote sooner if that's what should have been done. I would never be against people, having a voice, but at the same time, this has been going on for quite a long time, for months, and it really is something that we need in Franklin for our students there. And I know people have said it's a good project, but I worry when people talk about what's gonna happen with the budgets later. I don't want to be that if an Mvsd budget gets voted down the next 10 years, it's always gonna be because of a project done in Franklin. And I hope that's not gonna be the case. There is a need, and we've tried to explain it, and if there's anything I can answer for anybody, I would be glad to.
Thanks, Joyce. Are we ready to vote?
Peter has.
Peter?
I just wanted to touch on Rennick's about the COVID funding. So we've got these projects listed that we've done throughout the whole district, and as Laura's pointed out, a lot of this COVID money has gone to other things that we had in our budget, that we had budgeted for. So it allowed us to use some of those funds on a lot of these projects that we've done throughout the district. So it may not, the COVID money may not have specifically gone to these projects, but it has helped us finish a lot of these projects that are listed here. So it doesn't sound like the COVID money was all spent in one place. It was spent throughout the district.
And I just think going forward, we're gonna have to really get that message out there.
Yeah.
Alright.
One thing I think I said, but I'd like to repeat, One of the reasons I wanted to say ESSER monies and end it there, because I want ESSER and I want Dan and I want Chris and Joyce and all of our administrators to know if this is what's gonna go for buildings, and that there's $8 million left, they have about 18 months to find ways to spend it. So we're not sitting here 23 months from now when people telling us we got $3 million, we don't know what to do with it. So, because sometimes in situations like this, when I've worked on projects, we didn't have ESSER money, but people were going, oh, we're gonna have another 500 or 10 or $1 million, let's do this. This says, hey, ESSER money, you have for this, but if you're a principal and you're creative and you've got $1 million project, now it's time to put it on the table, because it'll never happen again in your lifetime. Okay, I'll keep going.
All right. Any other thoughts? Ready to vote? Okay.
So if we voted yes tonight, can we put it out there for the public to know? Like, hey, last night we voted yes to, we approved the 4.1 million going to Franklin, so that everybody, excuse me, everybody does know. I think they do have the right to know within a 24-hour period that we voted yes to it.
We need to craft that message though to let people know why. I agree.
PR.
Got someone who can work on that, so yeah, I think that would be important to get the communication out. All right. Last call. Okay, here we go. All right, so we have a motion, we're gonna vote. The motion is that the Mvsd board approves spending up to $4.1 million of ESSER funds on the Franklin Elementary School construction project. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions?
Abstain.
2 abstentions. Okay, motion carries 6-1-2. Rennick and Steve for the abstentions. Okay. Alright, thanks everyone, that's important conversation and a lot of good takeaways on communications. I'm gonna throw that on the future agenda items section so we can talk about those some more. The last item in this section.
We got another part, another.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, Don. My apologies. Unintentional.
Should any additional funds be required to complete this project, those costs will be proposed to all voters to take appropriate action. This action is a first step in a multi-year commitment from the Mvsd board, representing the towns of Franklin, Highgate, and Swanton, to build and or renovate our educational facilities to meet student needs. And that's just holding us to an obligation. This has nothing to do with the state or the feds or that. That's saying, I'm suggesting that as a board member, we agree to that so we can go forward and all feel that our turn will come.
Alright, so Don's made a motion. Anyone like to second that motion?
I'll second.
Peter is a second. Any discussion?
I will be abstaining because it's tied to the previous vote, which that's not a criticism, that has to be. So, but I just wanted to explain my abstention.
Alright. Terry?
Yeah, I think it's important because I think it may not be a legal commitment, but it's definitely a moral and ethical commitment from everyone that we're gonna support all the kids, and we're gonna find a way to do it.
What it doesn't do, it doesn't obligate future boards.
Well, it does ethically and it's morally, as far as I'm concerned.
But legally, but more, if this same board is here 2 years, they agreed to it, they said it. But let's say you had turnover, 6 new people, they said, we're not. But anyway, I want you to pass it, so.
Well, that's why I think adding the towns, that we're representing those towns, that I would think ethically and morally, the towns would feel some of that too. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know.
Any other questions, comments on the motion?
I have a question.
Okay, Jerry?
So, like, does that mean have a dollar value?
comment?
I don't think so. I
The,
mean, that's my opinion.
the way the motion has been read, the first penny needs to be approved by a vote.
But remember,
So that's
you
your
have-
dollar amount.
You got 400, you have 400,000 in a kitty, in a contingency. Beyond what we think this project is gonna cost at today's dollars for materials.
Okay, I'm understanding, and I might be misunderstanding the motion, that it's like future projects
This,
for the district,
no,
not,
it means this project in Franklin.
If this project in Franklin
Okay.
exceeds 4.1 million, then
Okay.
any additional funds for the project in Franklin need to be approved by the
And
voters.
you better believe if we're only looking for 100,000, and John, you can say you disagree with me, but if you're now in April of 2024, you need $100,000, you're gonna make it work.
Is that what the other was the second part?
yeah, well, the second, for some reason I heard other
The
projects.
second part, to
Does.
me, I'm hearing the second part is a commitment to the
Yeah.
rest without a particular dollar amount.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
No dollar amount, no requirement for a public vote on that.
You're just
but
making a commitment as a board member, you vote for it.
we-
Doesn't mean you vote for it,
Right.
but you will.
And unless there's some other magical funding source, it would be bonds, which would be public votes anyway.
I'm curious as to what the hesitation is, or the question.
I guess it's just so if it's above and beyond what's already been budgeted on that line. Cause I'm hearing more than just this Franklin project, I'm hearing like other projects
Yeah.
in the future are all gonna go to vote.
So.
Can you read
That's
the
not what the
motion
motion
again?
That's not what this
Okay,
is.
okay, so that, and that's fine, it's just what
But
I
it
was.
is about support, but
Yeah,
everyone's agreeing
absolutely.
to support.
And I agree, but it's the voting part, go out to vote.
Good point.
Can I ask a question?
Who's that?
Yeah, could you say your name for us? It's a little too small on the screen for us to.
Hi, I'm Kim Gates and I'm a member of the district. First of all, I wanna thank a couple of things. I wanna thank the building committee, I think that's what you're called. I was at the presentation last week, and I thought it was a very thorough job. And as a taxpayer, it's interesting to know the projects that have been done and the projects in the future. And I thought it was a very nice presentation. And I'm very pleased with the board moving this project forward. I have concerns, 2 years is not very much money to get projects done. But this motion that's on the floor now, my concern, there's two things, is if for some reason the project goes over budget, and we're in crazy times, so you never know with building materials and stuff. But is that gonna jeopardize, like if you have to go out for a vote to voters, is that gonna jeopardize your, I forgot what this, it's not ARPA money, but whatever this money is. Is that gonna put the whole district in a pickle to meet the deadlines for this financial part of it? I'm hoping it doesn't go over, but we have to be realistic. We all know costs have gone up crazy and there are complications. Just shipping delays are, outrageous. So my concern is financially, are you jeopardizing the funds? And then my understanding is there's like 7 million in funds. And so are you gonna put same restrictions on the remainder of the money to set caps to go out to the voters for the other remainders of the money?
So.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kim. So I heard two questions there. The first, I'll turn to Laura. I think the scenario that was painted there is that we, if we were to go over the 4.1, we have to go to the voters if we approve this motion, which then maybe takes us another couple months, and maybe it's voted down in the worst case scenario, and the project is not finished by the time. Does this put us in risk of losing out on any of the $4.1 million or having to fund it ourselves?
Not having anyone experience getting to that point with these funds and how the Agency of Education will handle that situation when it does happen, because we all know it will happen to someone at some point in the state of Vermont. again, I have to check a box when I submit for this application with a detailed plan and construction approval saying that we understand that we have all funding necessary to complete the project with a attachment of the contract which outlines the scope of work.
We will have to have conceptual and then construction approval with a very detailed design that comes within that $4.1 million.
Okay.
Period.
Okay.
Can we guarantee what that will look like after? No. If we ran into a problem, a big problem, John is telling us that EEI is very confident that that won't be the issue, but can I guarantee that and how the state will respond? No.
So, potentially a risk, but unknowns, and we're gonna.
Can I just say something, because it's a pretty high cost for what they're doing, considering, and I think they considered all the factors that have been going on, or they wouldn't have put so much money for that kind of addition, for that kind of enhancement.
A lot of
It's a lot more, there's a lot of contingency, I can't imagine, you know, I mean, if they'd come in with 2.1 million that we originally thought, then yeah, okay, it could be a problem, but they came in at 4.1 million for something that.
The contingency is around 15%.
It's around 10.
10%.
Yeah, the 2.5 was a different proposal completely.
Okay,
Yeah.
but still, I mean, if you look at what typically things used to cost versus what this is, there seems to be pretty reasonable, I mean, they're smart at what they do.
So any potential risk in that scenario, I think, sounds like that would be the cost of making this motion, is that we're accepting that risk. So that's the decision before the board on this motion.
And we're not saying that 4.1 million is all at risk, that has to be voted on, we're saying that if it costs another 500,000, that's what goes to voters.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that's huge, to make sure we were really clear about that.
And look, I don't know who's going to do it, I don't imagine John's gonna come out here every month, but we're gonna get updates, we're gonna know what's happening. You're gonna know 6 months before this job ends where we're at. Surprises usually come in the first 6 months, so, you know, it's not like, boy, we're never gonna know what happens until somebody gives us a key to open the door.
Kim, your second question was around the remainder of this ARP ESSER funding, which I believe is about 7.9 million in total.
No, the total of ARP is 7.9. This 4.1 goes within that. So
Right.
the other
Yeah,
$3.8 million of this fund already has a plan that's on the website and submitted and approved by the Agency of Ed. And so those projects are not, you know, I think what we're talking about here is, should we go outside of our ARP ESSER allotment?
Yeah.
Then we would do a separate thing. That's not something that we would do with paying for the salary and benefits of interventionists or tutors or professional development we're giving to teachers. I think there's sort of apples and oranges in that question, but I also understand the purpose of the question, which is, are we treating this fund equitably? So I wanted to make answer.
I think that got at your question, Kim.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to be clear, and I think it makes sense when you sign a contract, it's gonna have the 4.1 in there, so, okay, I'm good.
Alright, thanks.
Thank
Kim.
you.
Any other discussion on this motion? Seeing none. Alright, Don, would you do us the favor of reading it one more time?
Yes, should any additional funds be required to complete this project, those costs will be proposed to all voters to take appropriate action. This action is a first step in a multi-year commitment from the Mvsd board, representing the towns of Franklin, Highgate, and Swan, to build and or renovate our educational facilities to meet student needs. And we've said that so many times in our meetings that it's not sounding like a broken record.
Alright, so, Peter?
Do we need to, because it was part of another motion before, do we need to clarify, because it is a motion by itself, that we're talking about the,
Franklin Educational,
Yeah.
Franklin Elementary.
Okay, should any additional funds be
Construction
required to
project.
complete this project, put in the Franklin Elementary School project?
yeah,
Okay, thank you,
ESSER,
Peter.
ESSER funded Franklin Elementary School projects. Okay,
I'll write that in, okay?
alright,
Good.
very good.
Good catch.
Alright, we will vote. those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
2, alright, motion carries 7-0-2. Stephen and Toby abstained. Alright,
Can I ask a question? We know that Toby's reasons, I'm curious, Steve, can he tell us, or is that something that he wants to share? I mean, I know it's virtual, but it's just kind of curious to me.
I hesitate to put him on the spot, not knowing if he wants to, so I will leave that for, maybe you can chat with him afterwards if you're curious.
I'll keep it quick and simple. It's a lot of money, and I understand we have our own issues here in Highgate. And Toby actually had a really good presentation, and it made me feel like maybe we should be doing something different. I'm not really sure. I like Franklin very much, don't get me wrong. But we also have issues elsewhere.
Alright, thanks Steve. Okay, we are now on to the Highgate Safety
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for
Plan.
this.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, everybody, for all your hard work, and this has been a very difficult topic for the board, and I appreciate all of your commitment and thoughtfulness about this, so thank you for that. I know it has come up that we last spring, we did a safety presentation generally, talking about how our schools respond to emergencies. This is like a sharp veer here on topic. And we wanted to have some more detailed information with the boards. Any safety planning is a topic that you would have in executive session, because you would be perhaps talking about things that, it's important that the public know that we have drills, that we have plans and procedures, but not the details of them. The board wanted to have more information about that, given unfortunately the things that occur in our world. So we had talked about maybe doing it all in one night, but given the fact that we have 4 schools and there's a lot of questions that can occur, we wanted to maybe do 1 per month with the administration of that school, so that they could answer any questions in executive session for the board, so that you feel comfortable and know whatever next steps we may have in our process as well.
So we're going to make a finding that public knowledge would put one or more parties at substantial disadvantage, and we will have the opportunity in executive session to ask detailed questions or just get any more information that we may want tonight regarding Highgate's plans. And we'll have Yeshua join us for that.
I assume
And
not me.
Julie as well.
I mean, I'm happy to go.
If you want.
I think she was gonna vote tomorrow.
Oh, that's still 3 pages. Okay, so that brings us to future agenda items. We'll be talking about board development. I've written down, we're gonna talk about communications plan. Next month, we will be at MVU, so we'll have this same safety review for MVU. Kosha mentioned 3 dates in the future for continuous improvement plan updates, so that's on our list here. I think that's what we have for the moment.
Would we be able to put on, it, I'm trying to think, maybe a little something from athletics? We haven't.
We did discuss,
Myself, the athletic
yeah,
committee.
Jen, Dan and I discussed that we would likely do an athletics update in one of the 2 September meetings at MVU.
Perfect, that'd be great.
We're
Peter?
working on the calendar, and it's new for our administrators. So it's a shift for how we're reporting out, so we're working through that team by team.
With the athletic update or presentation, can we include what the administration is doing with, I know last year we had an issue with girls' soccer game.
fan behavior, and so I'd like an update on, obviously that gave us our district a black eye, and I just wanna make sure that we are addressing that and moving forward.
Is it our plan to have the athletic director help it like we have?
I'm not sure yet. So, as part of trying to move us towards having more in-depth discussions on those items that are on that graphic.
It'll be in depth, if you want depth.
Yeah, I know. So, I'm kicking around the idea of doing that more through a written report instead of in person. I'm certainly, this is a trial and error thing, so if there's lots of objections to these things, just let me know.
I would encourage you to think that through, Mr. Chairman, because the athletic director has done a good job over the years, the encouragement of Mr. Harvey.
Duly noted.
But anyway, you are the chair.
Okay.
So, I do have one other one though I would like to throw out. I'd like to start talking about the budget process in September. We said that a couple of years ago, I got it in the minutes, and we did get it started. But I think that we learned some things from last year, you always learn. So I'll leave that to you and Laura and Julie. I didn't say start the budget.
No, I had it slated for the second meeting in September to bring a budget
Well,
timeline.
that's what I'm saying,
That-
sometime
yeah,
in September.
yeah.
If we get really backed up because the chair keeps throwing things out, then we'll go to the first meeting in October.
That works. All right. Next we have future board meetings. We noted a meeting consent agenda for 6 o'clock on September 6th. I don't think we voted on this
I didn't know
yet.
what to call it.
Yeah. So this is the idea of taking a lot of these items, business items, and consent agenda items that you saw tonight, where there might not be very much discussion, putting them all in a separate meeting once a month, starting at 6 o'clock, where only 5 of us ideally would need to attend, so everybody gets once every other month. We take care of those items and then reserve this longer board meeting for the discussion topic. So I'm hoping somebody would be willing to make a motion, standing motion like we do at the beginning of the year, to schedule meetings at 6 p.m. on the first Tuesday of the month, and then we just be ready to roll.
I will support one of our chair's better ideas, that we move from 6 to 6:30 for the, what do you call it, on the agenda?
The other way around.
So no, so 6 o'clock would be the consent agenda.
For the consent agenda, with the majority of the board present. With the meeting, the full board starting at 6:30, is that what you want?
That's correct.
All right. You don't have to put in one of his better ideas.
It's been stricken from the record. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jen's a second. Any discussion on that?
So how are we gonna ensure we get 5?
So, we'll have to split us up into 2 groups, and then we'll have to manage it ourselves for folks who might not be able to make it on a particular night, and just try to swap. And there might be some where 6 is difficult all the time, and we'll need to just make some arrangements around that.
So is the motion the first meeting of the month? How
Yeah.
Yep, so the first meeting of the month would also have a 6 o'clock meeting for it, and then both our regular meetings would be 6:30.
Why would you want consent agenda?
Sorry, it's not
We're only on
decide.
I'm sorry. This question, I don't know.
Yeah, just because it's quick, we can do 2 sets of minutes. Instead of sitting.
Okay.
Just trying to make us all
So
more
we make 2
efficient.
sets of minutes,
Yep.
all right, I follow it now. Okay.
Discussion. Okay, those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I was an aye.
Okay. Motion carries 9-0. Is Steve still with us? Actually, no, Steve is with.
No, I'm still here. I say aye, but
Okay.
I might be late. That's the only thing.
Yeah, I understand.
I know, just as Steve and Rennick, I think it's tough for you 6.
Yeah,
I
6
I
is-
think 90% of the time I'm gonna be okay to be there at 6, so I'll.
Me too.
As long as we have a 6 o'clock quorum
Right.
will be good, and
So
then people
we're-
can move in.
It'll help because you'll have till 6:30 now instead of 6.
Even when I'm here and I try to second stuff, it never works.
All right, well, we have one more chance for you, Rennick. Looking for a motion to enter executive session at 8:49. To make that motion.
I will make the motion.
Alright.
Go first over there for Rennick. I guess to enter executive session, not the time. All right, is there a second?
What do we discuss?
To discuss
Safety.
Highgate safety plan. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Joanne's second. All right, inviting in Yeshua and Julie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, motion carries 9-0. We are in executive session at